Hello, welcome back to the pod book, Why Your Life Really Matters. So it seems this is still happening. I'm still alive. You must also be still alive. But it is going to end. That seems pretty certain. And in the last chapter, I explored how I think we can understand the traditional teaching that the psyche or soul continues after the death of the body in a new way, with a new ontology, as part of one evolving naturalistic universe. And keeping the essence of the old teaching, but in a very new light. And in this chapter, I want to explore what we might be able to glean about the experience after death. But the first thing I want to focus on is what survives. Because there's a lot of ideas I come across in spirituality, which I think are wrong, which treat it like, well, your body and your mind, your personality, that all goes. But there's some essence of you. I don't know what makes it an essence of you if your whole personality is gone. But that's you. It's a pure something, consciousness, soul thing. That continues. So there's an essence which can continue even though the body and the mind and your personality and my Timness and your you-ness, that's going to just end. Now, something is going to end, that's for sure. Tim right now is this body and these relationships with these people that are happening in his social life, and that will end because there'll be no body. But what I'm suggesting on top of that is, but what continues is you. You survive, not some bit, not some you, because everything that you've been, all of those experiences you've had in life are still you. You are your past. That still continues. You haven't left that behind. It's not the dismissal of your personality or any of that. And I think this fits with the reports from the near-death experiences, which are what we've got alongside the spiritual traditions, the old reports, to glean things from, is that they meet their loved ones. Well, they meet their loved ones. They don't meet loved ones that have no link to their previous personality and meet them who has no link to their previous self. No, they meet a continuation of who they are. And I think this is really important. The other thing that seems really relevant here is a very common experience. One of the things that's repeated by a lot of people who have NDEs is what is called in the literature now the life review, which is where people go, wow, I experienced my whole life, like everything I'd ever done. Well, that's you. With this new ontology I'm exploring, that's you're experiencing. And the fact that you're experiencing your life means that hasn't been left behind. It means it's important, I suggest. So you're experiencing you, but more than that, people often say, and on top of that, it was like I was seeing it from everyone else's perspective as well, all the effects I had that I may not have known at the time. So it's not like just a reconnecting with what I experienced. It's seeing it in a more emergent light, and you're seeing yourself as relational. Well, that's what I've been suggesting when we discussed identity. You are your past, but you're the relationship between this evolving particular psychobiological system when you're alive and all the other systems. So that what you experience after death is there's my past and there's my relationship with everything else and everyone else. And where are you doing that? Well, it's in an imaginal space, it seems. And this imaginal space has been given lots of names throughout history by different cultures, different traditions. One of my favorites is in the Tibetan tradition, where they've studied it in great length, called the Bardos. In ancient Egypt, they call it the Duat. It's often called the spirit realm. The Kogi in Colombia called it the Aluna. All sorts of names. But what they're describing, it seems to me, is, I want to say, using an analogy, it's like a virtual reality. Except it's not artificial, it's real. And what we're doing with creating virtual realities is mimicking, unconsciously, I think largely, the way reality actually is. So that we've created a domain of images based on our sensory experience of the biophysical world. And then we've created an imaginal realm from it. And I've called that the Imaginos, to give it a name, a new version of all those other names. Because I quite like the idea of, look, this is the cosmos, and from it has come the Imaginos. And here everything is run by physical, biological passivity, and here it's not. In the Imaginos, it's the interaction of the passivity systems on the level of the psyche. And there's a phrase I really like, which is to describe it as an ecology of souls. It's a phrase I actually adopted from Terence McKenna, who I made music with, and he used that. This was a long time ago in the 90s when I was young. And he used that phrase in a track that we recorded, and it stuck with me because I thought it was a beautiful description. He was using it to describe what he saw on his visionary psychedelic experiences. And here, what I think it's accurate, it's describing the confluence of psyches who are psi-sensing each other, and in the process of doing that, creating what I think of as soulscapes, it seems a good word to describe it, which are imaginal environments, where collectives, different collectives here creating this soulscape, different collectives here creating this soulscape. And that's what I think the Tibetans are getting at with the bardos, all these different bardos. And the soulscapes are evolving like everything else. So they've been set up and they have an evolutionary past, and souls can enter that and contribute to the evolution of that soulscape. So one way of getting what I'm exploring here is we can look at the evolution of heaven, if you like, and maybe hell too, because the psyche, most people know, is a place that can be heavenly, but it also can be hellish. And that if we look at the traditional accounts of heaven, rather than interpreting that as just a cultural fantasy, actually to be open to the possibility that we're actually looking at a description of the evolution of the Imaginos. So you go back far enough and it seems that people relate what happens after death as a land of shadows and shades. It's like nothing's very formed. And then what starts to emerge is idealized versions of everyday life, where you're experiencing the happy hunting grounds where it always goes well, or the drinking halls of Valhalla where you're always having a party. All of that sort of description. And as the great religious traditions emerge, then they become religious. We have saints and Buddhas and choirs of angels. And that what we're witnessing here is the evolution of soulscapes. And then there's the experience of the light, which is a traditional image for God, powerful image. And this seems particularly important to me because I have had experiences of the light while I'm alive. I haven't had a near-death experience. And one in particular was so absolutely overwhelming in such a beautiful way that I have some idea what people are talking about, I think, when they relate it in the after-death experience. And certainly for me, and I think this is true for people in the NDE as well, what you're actually connecting with isn't a light. That's an image. What you're actually connecting with is an amazing greater intelligence, what I've called the super soul. It's the emergent God. And what's important here to me is that this flips the idea which is often in Eastern traditions, which is, well, you get to dissolve back into that like a drop dissolving back into the ocean, which sounds kind of lovely maybe when you first heard it. I quite liked it. Oh, that sounds good. But sit with it for a bit and maybe it's not so good, because it's part of that very negative view of human life, which goes, your individuality, your dropness, just let it go. It's just in the way. Just get back to where you were before, integrated into the ocean. That's it. You just disappear. And what that does to me is it goes, oh, you know, all those struggles and the suffering of human life, and not just yours, but everyone's, didn't count for anything. What it says is your life didn't really matter. What mattered was you got out. And that's very much the message of some ancient forms of spirituality. And we'll explore in later chapters why I think that's perfectly understandable given their experience at that time. But what I'm suggesting is the opposite. As I've said many times now, let me just touch it one more time. Your individuality is what you bring to the super system, what you bring to God. It's not about it dissolving into it. It's about the continued evolution of your individuality to contribute to that thing which is greater than you. So that the beauty of the survival of the psyche is that evolution of your individuality continues. You don't just fall back into the ocean and dissolve away. And I think that's key for conveying how I've come to see the evolution of the immortal soul, to use the old language. It's that the biological level of evolution is obviously very different to the physical level. And the reason it's different is because there's now life and death. And therefore evolution can move much faster. It can try out an idea. In the creative process, new passivity arises. If it can survive, you've got a new species. And that new species the members will also die out, leaving room for new options. And so this is a fabulous way, relatively quickly, to evolve multiple new successful species. And that's what's happened. But it's a terrible way to evolve individuals. And my suspicion is it's that at this early level, it's about species. It's not about individuals. Individuals come and go. That's all right. But that as the process has moved forward, the individual becomes much more important. Now, I'm not going to get into when that happens, or I don't know. But I do think that by the time we reach the human being, we all have an intuitive feeling that individuality really matters. It matters that person who I love has all of that accumulated wisdom, or just their character, just them, their uniqueness. It's not throwaway. It's not like, oh, well, there it was, now it's gone, next, move on. It's like, no. And I think that's not nothing. That's not just sentiment. That's expressing something really deep about the nature of existence at this level. So what I would suggest is that the psyche has evolved to survive the death of the body, which is enabling a new level of the evolutionary process, which is no longer about the evolution of species. Now we're into the evolution of the individual, the evolution of soul. So that traditional idea in spirituality that, although they didn't probably mean evolution in the way we do now, but the idea of the evolution of the soul is absolutely right. We just need to understand this new light. It's not like this was all set up for the evolution of the soul. No, nobody set it up. It arose in this natural process. But now it has moved on from physical evolution to biological species evolution to the evolution of the individual psyche. So there's lots of questions unanswered. Of course, there always will be. But I will return to this later in the book. In these first chapters, my aim is to get across the essence of each big idea, so you can see how all fits together, and then we'll go into more and more detail as the pod book develops. So we will return to this. I want to look at other traditional ideas, reincarnation, for example. So, okay, what happens if you survive death and you're in the Imaginal? Then what? We'll look at those ideas, which also, like so many, can look difficult or ridiculous, but there may be ways of understanding them that they can be seen in a new way. And so we'll look at that. For now, my aim in these last two chapters has been to present something plausible, I feel, that says the options are not just the end or religion, that we can see the survival of the psyche as the continuation of the process that's happening now, the intensification of the imaginos, of the imaginal level, which is happening now, and that it points very much towards why your life really matters. Because whatever happens in this life, whatever suffering occurs, whatever mistakes may be made, they're all redeemable by the future, as long as the evolutionary process continues. So maybe I'll end with this idea, which I first expressed in Soul Story, where all of this began, some many years ago now, in that book behind me. And at some point in the book, I kind of, as a confessional, I went, look, this is a book of revolutionary, pretty intense philosophy. But this whole edifice, beautiful, I think, edifice of ideas, I've developed them really to shore up a very kind of naive intuition that arises for me when I enter what I now call the individual communion, when I touch that big love, that great benevolence, that great intelligence. There's this knowing of something, and when I've tried to say it, it comes out a little bit gooey, as it were. And the way I expressed it in Soul Story was, I want to say, life is good, death is safe, and what really matters is love. And that still captures something powerful for me, but I'm aware it also sounds like one of those memes on the internet that sound great, but if you think about them, it's like, really? And that's also true of this. You know, life isn't just good, is it? It can be awful. But if the evolutionary process continues, all of the badness is redeemable by the future, by new possibilities. And death can be often a really terrible business for the dying person and everyone around them. And one should not ignore that. And yet, if it is safe, as it were, if it is like, it's okay, it will continue, it puts the whole struggle in a new light. To struggle into nothing is not the same as to struggle into, whoa, okay, now this. And what really matters is love. Well, obviously lots of things really matter, more as well as love, on the practical level, on every level. But what that captures for me is when I enter this more emergent state, when I see that my life in this bigger context, when I see how much each of our individual lives matter, then that connection we feel with each other that we call love, yeah, it is. It's about love then. It's about love. Join me in the next chapter where I'm going to ask, given this new philosophy we've been exploring, what is it to live a spiritual life? And let me remind you that if you'd like to connect with me in person, then you can join my online community, the ICU, the International Community of Individuals. And we get the chance to chat. I share new ideas. We go through people's questions and we do individual practices together. And it's a truly international and inquiring, open-hearted group of people. So check it out.